Wait to see how it goes down. We are starting off on blue shift, and already we've had a little bit of player interaction with Stats forcing that natural expansion to go towards the third base.
That's right, with that probe coming out there, he's able to block that hatchery. That forces Serral to set his hatchery up somewhere else. This gives Protoss a little bit of control early on in the game. It's certainly not something Serral is going to have a trouble with.
No, it's something that he does run into. Protosses love to do this, but he's got to be careful as well. This can set up little areas where Stats can show some extra aggression. If your creep spread is a little bit slower, maybe his initial adepts can do some damage. Maybe can pick off some drones. And at this level, any damage you do early on really can snowball.
So let's keep in mind, there's a reason why we don't let these players play one game to decide who's the best. It's a best of 7 because there are so many different strategies in Starcraft. There are so many different ways to play the game. You have to be prepared on every single map in every single situation. Of course, in a series like this, you can farm data from your opponent. You see how they play in Game 1 and Game 2. Maybe you use something new there and incorporate that to try to counter them. So there's going to be a lot of planning here, a lot of mind games throughout this series.
Mind games, you say, Tasteless? Well, already Stats has a proxy pylon. It looks like probably a Stargate going to be going down here, and this is not very common from Stats. He likes to be the defender. He likes to absorb your attacks, but Serral is too good to just play textbook against, and he is going for some early aggression.
Yeah, Stats is known for being an incredibly conservative player. He actually wants the game to go pretty long. If he can get all the tech he needs, he usually has an answer for everything and anything, but Stats opening up with a little bit of aggression here. Having that Stargate over there allows Oracles, for instance, to get inside the main base and kill workers a little bit more quickly.
And look at this, he's already bullying back some scouting lings out on the map. Really nicely done by Stats. He's trying to just keep Serral busy, pick off anything he can, because if that Oracle gets into the main base undefended, it can do massive damage.
We see that that Adept is going to be coming up here right now. Now the Queen here is to try to deflect. It acts as a deterrent to keep the Adepts from getting too far forward, but Stats will go ahead and try to shade in here. Now, especially at this level, even if you can get a few drone kills, it can add up to a lot.
Oh my gosh, Serral got a Zergling into Stats' base. He's scouting around but doesn't see anything. This should tell him that there's something out. Is he going to be able to defend it in time, though?
These lings are going to come up here now. The Adepts have shaded away, and here comes that Oracle. Now, this is really what we want to watch for. How many kills can this Oracle get?
Yeah, it is very important right now. This is where the big damage can be done. Instantly pulls his drone. Serral trying to evacuate this area, losing just one drone so far. A second one, a third one goes down, and Stats continues his harassment.
Okay, this is an incredible amount of damage. It looks like he will actually get 6 before the Oracle has to run away, and it will not be killed off. Meanwhile, a counterattack down here by Serral trying to break through. In fact, it's not properly walled up. The lings do slip through.
Yeah, he does have a little bit of a flank. Looks like he might pick that off, and in fact, he does. Surrounds that Adept once again. Stats trying to get a full wall. He does, but there are 4 lings in his base.
The probes have been pulled. They're going to have to be used to try to take out these Zerglings as this wall-in is going to continue to be set up. There are more lings on the way, however, and Stats is scrambling to try to get some proper defense.
Oh my gosh, that pylon might go down with more speedlings coming down. Serral putting on a huge amount of pressure, and here he goes.
He's breached the main base. He's going to be going in here for some probe kills. He needs to try to balance out the damage that Stats has already done to him.
Oh, it looks like these Oracles might have gotten recalled to deal with these Zerglings. He's going to chase them around. Great micro by Serral, trying to use up as much of the Oracle energy as possible.
The lings now hitting the pylon. The wall will be breached once again. Another pylon goes down to try to sandbag the attack. The Oracle, meanwhile, is going to clean up the rest of the Zerglings inside of the main.
Wow, Serral has really made something happen here after taking that devastating attack from the Oracle, keeping them busy right now, scouting out everything Stats is doing, breaking his wall multiple times. Some beautiful play from our Finnish Zerg.
And from here on out, these lings are going to be used more to try to spot and see what else is being built here in the main. There's not going to be too much more damage here. Behind this, though, Stats is getting 3 more gateways. He's getting a Templar Archives, and he's upgrading Zelt legs. We have a Warp Prism coming out here as well. He can use that to start to try to harass the Zerg and control him a little bit.
Yeah, this is a very common play, but he's adding some more gateways as well. It will be some Archon drop aggression along with some charged Zealots. If Serral does not defend against this perfectly, it could really set him behind.
Now these 2 Oracles are going to come in here, try to get a few more kills. You can one-shot drones with 2 Oracles, although it looks like the targeting was a little bit off sync there for Stats. And so he doesn't get the same drone kills he was probably hoping to get. But this attack coming here from Stats, this is going to be really powerful. He's going to morph Archons over here, and these are great with a Warp Prism because an Archon is almost entirely shields. Shields, of course, regenerate. So the fact that he can come in here, try to do damage, the moment the Archon gets weak, he picks it back up, backs off. Usually the Protoss trades very effectively, but we already see Serral spotting this with his Ling, so he's going to get ready and brace for impact.
That's right. He sees an Archon drop is coming, but does he know about the Charged Zealots that could be warped in? We're going to see in a moment here. Stats already starting this harassment, picking off a creep tumor, moving forward, but that's enough roaches that I don't think Serral's too afraid right now.
Okay, the Warp Prism's going to be coming up. Being escorted by this small air army is going to be key. We don't have the Zealots coming in here as an attack just yet. Now the Warpin is going to come, which means that Stats is committed to this area.
Don't forget, there's 2 Oracles in here as well, turning on their beams, going forward. The Phoenix gets a lift as well. A charge in by these Zealots, but it looks like Serral is going to hold tight.
Serral holds this so easily. That did absolutely nothing but bruise a few of the roaches, and he's going to have to retreat. Now look at the supplies here. It's about 120, 270. I have to imagine that Serral is itching to counterattack across the map and try to deny that third base. In fact, can we get a shot of the third base really quickly here? Okay, it has been spotted. There is a Ling hitting it, but this harass is going to continue.
Yeah, but he's got to be careful. If he loses that Warp Prism, he is going to be just about dead. But look at this. I am loving what we're seeing from Serral. He's adding that Infestation Pit, and that is going to allow him to get into Swarm Host play against the Stats that he knows has to be going for Immortals.
So a small number of roaches come down here. He wants to see if there's anything stray that he can try to pick off. Of course, the Immortal immediately counters the Roach, and he's got to be careful because with these sentries here, if the right force fields get up, he's going to get cornered and basically wiped out. So an immediate turnaround here from Serral. He goes in here and takes out actually all 3 of those sentries. Beautiful play.
Yeah, you know, those Roaches were going to die anyways because of the force fields, like you said. So to turn them around and still gain that value to knock out those high gas costing units was a good, solid move from Serral.
Okay, we have 5 Swarm Hosts close to coming out here. Again, I don't know if Stats is going to be totally prepared for this. This is not what a normal ZVP looks like. And some of this may be because these players have to play a series of games, so you definitely want to mix up your strategies so you can be unpredictable.
Yeah, you know, the Swarm Hosts are deadly indeed, but Stats has a strong army already. If he can avoid fighting against those Locusts, if he can walk around the Swarm Hosts when they are not ready to shoot again, that's where Stats might be able to actually endanger Serral's lead.
Yeah, we see this with certain sets of units. Broodlords is another one where sometimes the best way to deal with them is to actually avoid them entirely and attack wherever they're not. But for right now, it seems like Stats is just staying back at home, which could put him in trouble depending on where these Locusts start to hit.
And we see it right there for a moment. His first-person view moving so quickly through here, rotating through everything, making sure his macro is on key. Just such a quick player and immediately reacting to this Roach attack.
Okay, so these Roaches are really more to keep the Protoss occupied. If he can get any kills here on these workers, that's ideal. But Serral knows this can't really do that much. However, keeping the Protoss pinned back at home is going to allow Serral to set up a pretty good position here on the mini-map. We see this happening right here, right now.
Oh, a very good move. Those Locusts are close. Stats is going to have a hard time against this. The Roaches coming in as well. Those are not the scary things, though. These Locusts diving in, attacking onto the Zealots and Immortals, but it looks like Stats will deal with this just fine.
Okay, some force fields do come down here. He needs to try to retreat until there's more Locusts ready to fire. Stats is in pursuit here, going to try to chase this down as much as he can.
Oh, he's chasing it right now. Some beautiful juggling with that Warp Prism, popping in and out these damaged units. But Serral, he's microing backwards. He's waiting for another charge on these Swarm Hosts. And when that's up, he is going to be ready to fight again.
It looks like these rocks are going to be torn down. Serral wants to have the right position set up. He wants to have proper circulation here on the map. Is Stats overextending? We already see that Serral is basically maxed out. And here's where Serral is eager to pounce. He's going to come forward. He takes out another sentry. And now he's going to try to get these Immortals here that are straying in the end.
Oh, some great micro there by Stats. He's juggling back the Immortals before they take any critical damage. But the Swarm Hosts are coming up as well. He warps in some more Zealots. Oh, some nice files coming out right now from Serral. And look at those Locusts coming in to pin him.
The Locusts are moving in right now. Stats is going to back up, trying to get in between this Nexus, and as those come down, storms blanket the area. All that Stats has right now is these Immortals and Archons.
Well, the Immortals certainly still powerful indeed, so Serral turns around and waits for these Swarm Hosts to recharge, but he is going to lose some Queens on running away.
As you can see, Stats has managed to push this back just slightly. Now, what's most important for Stats is dragging this game out. Serral has a lot of leverage for the time being, but if Stats can hang on, if he can continue to tech up, he will certainly have a solution to what's been presented to him.
Yeah, you're very right about that. Stats is so good at getting into the late game, having the right compositions, hitting the right attacks, countering what the Zerg is doing. But Serral's mixing up once again, getting some baneling speed to go with this. That's going to be really interesting when that finishes.
Okay, we see the Roaches once again pursuing. Remember, the War Prism can only pick up so much, and a beautiful surround. These Immortals are so precious right now for Stats. It's the only real answer he has for all of these Roaches.
Oh, and he loses a lot of them. The Archon falling there as well. Only a few left. 2 more do pop out. Some high Templars coming down. He needs those storms, and he does have them.
Okay, we see the Locust coming in here. He's actually managed to separate the army here from the second base as well. So much damage coming down. Stats trying his best to stay in control, but only 4 Immortals remain.
Oh my God, Stats juggling his heart out right now, warping in more units, flanking on these Ravagers. Did Serral commit too much here? Stats somehow keeping 4 Immortals alive.
I don't know how Stats is managing to last this long. We see the Nexus here in the upper left. There's nothing there to defend, and Stats is actually going to try to chase this.
Oh, I don't know if chasing this is the right plan, but every time they shoot those Locusts out, you have to be ready to do something against the Zerg player, because when they're back, you're in trouble.
We saw a Spire being made. He could absolutely suddenly erupt with a bunch of Mutalisks and completely blindside Stats. But in this game, he might not even need that. We see Stats just barely hanging on, trying to keep control of his side of the map.
Oh no, another set of Locusts dive in. A ton of damage done to Stats' army. It's almost gone right now. Serral pushing through, looking for a victory in game number 1.
You can see the attack continuing to come forward. He's banging at the gates of Stats' second base. There is so much over here. The core goes down.
Oh, he breaks through there, but really we need a lot more units from Stats if he is to hold on. Some great side storms going out, but you know what? If there is a Protoss on the planet Earth that can come back from that stronger in game number 2, it has to be this man, the ultimate defensive Protoss.
Okay, similar to game number 1, we saw that the probe was sent out to try to interfere with the hatchery being planted at the second base. So the hatchery is going to be put in what would normally be the third base location. Again, this is not something unusual that pro gamers don't have to deal with, but it's just important to note how exactly Stats wants to try to dictate this game.
And I wonder if he's going to try anything like that previous game. You know, he hid that Stargate out there. That's kind of a strategy you might use once or twice maximum in a best of 7, because your opponent is going to be really on the lookout for it due to the high damage output it has. But the fact that he used it in game 1, it got its damage, he still lost. What do? Do you pull back and play a more conservative Stargate in your main base?
I think the answer is actually yes. I think you really do want to try to play a slower game here if you're Stats, because even though Stats got in there and did some damage, I think Serral handled it so well. If you play conservative, it's a little bit harder to crack you. Now here from Serral, I don't really know what he's going to be planning here either. I mean, one thing about both of these players is that they really can play the full range, although they do both tend to lean towards more late game stuff.
Yeah, and that's always an interesting matchup to see, right? Because who is going to play a little bit differently? Who's going to be the initial aggressor in this matchup? I feel like overall it should be Stats throughout the series, right? If you let Serral go without any pressure on him, he is going to get an unbeatable late game army.
This is one of the fascinating things about Serral, is he is so hard for players to control. He really does just react to everything properly. When the dust settles, he's always either ahead by a lot or by enough that he can then start to leverage his position. And then if you're too passive against Serral, he simply outgrows you.
Yeah, it's quite a conundrum to take him out, but Stats is going for what you suggested here, Tasteless. He's going for a more conservative play. The Stargate is in his main base, but that doesn't tell us the whole story. We're going to have to see what units he makes, what tech does he add on afterwards.
Okay, we're waiting to see what's going to come out of that Stargate. It is going to be an Oracle. All par for the course right now in the current meta of StarCraft 2 in 2018. The Oracle has a lot of different purposes. A lot of times we'll see it go in there and try to kill workers, but you can also tag the opposing army and monitor their movement that way, or use it as a detector. So it's a great unit to start things off, and it doesn't really tell us what kind of mainline strategy Stats is doing so far. This can lead into so many different things.
Yeah, very, very true there. Now, oh no, Stats instantly losing his 2 first Adepts. Normally, if you lose those, you really want to be killing drones, not just picking off a few Zerglings. So already kind of a bumpy start for Stats, but definitely not something that is game-ending.
I do worry that that might actually indicate the stress that Stats is under to lose something like that right away. We see the Oracle coming in here. It does take a little bit of damage, only killing 2 drones, which is pretty standard as far as the numbers go. Serral, similar to game 1, looks to try to come in here and penetrate this second base and do some damage, but you can see Stats is adjusted and is ready for something like that.
Yeah, he is very ready, and Serral pulls back, realizing that such is the case. Now, the Overlord is scouting what's going on. It sees the additional gateways. It sees the Phoenix. Looking at this right now, everything looks pretty standard from Stats. I think he's going to go for a third base.
We see these Oracles coming up now, looking to try to come in here and take out some drones. Now, again, 2 Oracles can one-shot a drone. The drones scramble to get away. We could see some more damage coming down here, and the Oracle's on the run, and it goes down.
Yeah, 3 drone kills, 4 drone kills maybe with these Adepts in the natural. Okay, now he's starting to pull something together here. Stats attacking that economy of Serral, but I gotta say, Serral's defense is still very strong.
You know, you gotta watch out when you do these kind of moves as Protoss. Sometimes you can't get the third base. Even though you did damage, you don't have anything to defend back at home. We also have 2 Robos being made here, Atosis. Yeah.
2 Robos right now. This is a little bit uncommon. Normally you'll see that third Nexus before that. Okay, here is the third Nexus. Maybe that was a little bit late, like you said. You know, he didn't have units at home to defend. So maybe not that weird here from Stats.
Okay, so with the 2 Robos, he can definitely get a lot of Immortals, for instance, which is going to keep him very safe against anything Roach-related. Let's not forget how Stats lost game 1. I mean, he got outpowered there with so many Roaches and Ravagers and Swarm Hosts as well, that there was no option for Stats to move the game into late game.
Yeah, now Stats is trying to set up a late game while continuing harassment. He has a bunch of Adepts out here right now, but Serral sees everything coming. His creep spread is already phenomenal for this early into the game. He's really covered a lot of the map, so it's going to be hard for Stats to get in and get damage. But to be fair, he made a quick Warp Prism.
That's true. Now, the Warp Prism is one way that you can stay back at home and be safe defending, but you can come out on the map and start to do warp-ins here and there and try to do some damage. But you have to be careful. This can be a double-edged sword. If you overextend, if you start to hemorrhage too many units and you're not doing anything, then the Zerg ends up getting ahead anyways.
That is very true. Now, Serral balancing his Roaches, balancing his drones. He realizes after seeing that Warp Prism, he does need some defense out here. Now, the Phoenix pushing back Overlord so he can try to get in here and drop, but already Roaches are awaiting these Adepts. He runs in, takes some damage on him, picks off a couple drones, and turns around. Stats is just relentless with his harassment this game.
Okay, the Lings have been chased out. Serral using these Lings to basically monitor the movement here of Stats, to keep Stats uncomfortable. Let's not forget that the 3 sentries that we see here, those were assassinated in the last game with a really nice move there from Serral. And those sentries are really integral to actually defending a lot of what the Zerg is going to throw at you. You want to try to abuse the surface area as much as possible to limit how much damage you're going to be receiving.
And you know what, Tasteless? I think there's a decent possibility we're going to see Stats hit a very sharp timing attack. He's adding 5 gateways. You know, his +1 in his charge is going to be done. He already has the Warp Prism. He's making Immortals 2 at a time. I mean, he might be able to push out and maybe deny that 4th base or something.
Okay, we've got 5 more gates coming, as you said, Artosis, and I think this is a really smart way to play this. I think that Stats is trying at his best to adjust from what happened in the last game. He wants to actually do a little bit more of seizing the game and trying to control what his opponent's up to.
Yeah, trying to pick off these Zerglings that are keeping tabs on him. Of course, Serral never stops scouting. An Overseer going through into the main base of Stats. He's going to see some additional gateways, not the best saturation here on the main base, meaning where are those probes exactly? And he is starting to make a lot of units against us, so Serral preparing for this little push.
Now, Zealot Charge, is going to be finishing up here, which is going to give him a lot more muscle. You see those Lings trying to counterattack to see if he can maybe draw that army back. And Stats is going to come back here. It's, of course, not clear for Stats. And, you know, StarCraft is a game of incomplete information. You don't always know what's out on the map. So he is afraid of a much larger counterattack, but actually Serral has pretty much the bare minimum out on the map.
Yeah.
So really all Serral has to do is be ready for this huge attack. And it's going to be pretty tough, even for Serral, to try to hold this when this does come, because he's getting so many Immortals, he's getting Storm, he's going to have a very solid army, and this is really where Stats begins to shine. If you give him all the units, all the tech, all the upgrades, there's almost nobody better than him as Protoss.
Well, it seems like right now he's just Sharking around the map, you know, he's got his units out, it's keeping some pressure on Serral, but Serral's realizing, okay, this attack is actually not coming right now. He's setting up his own attack. We see Serral's first-person view here. He's getting some drop overlords into position, coming over here, checking on a fourth. No fourth yet, is going to deny it for the time being, but this is where we get to see how good is Stats' defense on multiple fronts, because there is going to be attacks going after the third and the main.
Yeah, it looks like Serral's going to be the first one to truly initiate. This is more of an old school style of playing, doing the mass overlord drops. We saw this a lot in Starcraft 1. Coming here into Starcraft 2, he's going to try to come in, and I don't know if there's actually that much to defend. We see Serral unloading all these gateways, and pylons are exposed.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be able to pick off at least a couple of these pylons. Units from Stats coming up into this main base, but look at that. Serral going to load up and get out before losing anything.
Okay, that was a great play. A little bit of damage done. Serral didn't really lose anything. You can see he's looking. He's trying to see if there's an imbalance in the defense somewhere. Is there a crack where he can slip through and start to do more damage?
That's right, and I got to tell you, Stats is defending quite well. Yeah, he's losing a couple buildings here and there, but Serral hits that third like expected after the drop, and Stats is ready for him. But now the next phase of the game, something that Serral really excels at, that's lurker play.
Lurker play is going to be very interesting from Serral. It can be used, of course, to defend, but also if you try to get a good position on the map, maybe at one of their expansions and burrow that, you're going to do so much damage. But first, Stats has to figure out how to get out on the map. Even though this army coming out is pretty scary, this is going to trigger the drop from Serral that's going to go in the main. We're seeing that happen right now.
Oh, but look at this. He's got plenty of units here right now, I would say. A lot of Stalkers, Zealots being warped in as well. Serral deciding to fight. It's a bigger drop than the first time. Maybe Stats has overestimated his defense. Serral pushing him back down his ramp.
If he can get those gateways, he's going to stop the production, but Stats is not turning around. Two great storms damaging the bulk of what Serral has to defend.
That is a really scary push coming out of Stats, but this drop into his main base is going to unpower more gateways. This is a big problem for Stats. How is he going to hold on?
We see the push continuing to come forward. I don't know if Serral has an answer for all of these immortals. This expansion is going to go down. Meanwhile, Stats' main is in shambles.
Oh, great Psy Storms coming out, but still a few units remain. His gateway's mostly unpowered. Serral coming with a huge arc right now, trying to get in here, but the Psy Storms of Stats, the immortal count of Stats are so strong.
Keep in mind, there is no War Prism with this army, so what you see is what you get. Serral continuing to surround the few remaining immortals. Drones now being pulled as well.
The drones mean that this is serious. Serral knows he must hold right here, right now. Another great storm, but only 3 immortals left over, and it looks like Serral will hold.
The last parts of the army have been destroyed, and back inside the...
At this event, you see the opening here
it's the same
on
thing.
Dreamcatcher. Yeah, blocking that hatchery, but Serral, he hasn't cared yet. He hasn't really been fazed by this.
So, what is Stats going to try to do here? I really liked what he did in Game 2. I think the problem is that once Serral started to do some damage, Stats panicked a little bit. And you were talking about this, but we had to jump into game, but I want to go back and talk about this Artosis because it's really important. The first drop that went into the main in Game 2, he actually backed it up with even more the second time around. So that screwed with the calculus for Stats on how much he needed to defend. He had an army there with Stalkers ready to try to shoot that down, but it was way more drop overlords. And that's when the game snowballed because Stats had already gone too far out on the map. He can't really turn around. If he does turn around and save his base, okay, great. Well, then Serral continues to grow and expand and conquer the rest of the map.
Yeah.
And then Stats is just zoned out of a win. So very tough situation for Stats going into Game 3.
It just shows the brilliance, truly, of both players. Even though it went wrong for Stats, he left exactly enough to crush the size of that first drop. And most Zergs, they don't even have the speed or the extra attentional resources to make that drop bigger. But there, Serral stands above all other Zergs on Earth, having to beat already the second best and third best Zergs out there, and showing why he is here in the finals.
Okay, we have the Stargate going down now. Again, Stats seems to want to open up in a pretty orthodox fashion. He's not really taking any huge risks. It's fairly common to see in a best of 7 1 or 2 all-ins or a cheese, simply because you can rob a win from your opponent. Whatever they plan doesn't matter anymore because you got in there and you did the damage right away. But again, conservative play from both these guys so far.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel it. I think that if we do get into those later game situations, it can be a nice, even, long, highly contested game. Whereas Serral just doesn't seem to take damage early on. He's like completely cheese-proof almost.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and it's very subtle too, how well he handles every single engagement. He always has just a little bit more. There's nothing sloppy about anything he's doing. And that's where it's tough, because we've already seen a few small errors here from Stats. We saw him lose the Adepts right away. In one game, we saw him lose an Oracle at one point in time. And it seems like you are simply not allowed to do that against Serral, or he gets a little bit ahead and then more ahead, and suddenly you're completely smothered with a Zerg army.
Well, that is certainly what we have seen thus far. Now, looking at the game that we're in, some good scouting by the Adept. We haven't seen any Adepts wasted yet. Looks like he's going to pressure a little bit more heavily with 3 this time. Doesn't want to just lose them to Zerglings like the previous game.
Okay. The Oracle being made once more here. Now we have 10 Lings. Let's see if he makes any more. Because occasionally, even though you're taking a third base, and one would think that's there to try to expand more and more, sometimes we'll see Zergs pull the trigger and try something crazy. But this time it is going to be more and more drones. He's continuing to develop tech-wise.
Tasteless, I don't know how Serral does this, but look, it's double Stargate play coming out of Stats here. And what does Serral do? He has an evolution chamber on the way. Probably for +1 melee attack for Zerglings, which is a great counter to double Stargate. I feel like he's reading Stats like a book this game.
Okay, here comes that Oracle. 3 kills, 4 as it goes ahead and backs out. And that was very nicely done there by Stats. That's the kind of attack he wanted to pull off, just getting enough damage done. And so the game will continue on, but Stats needs to keep up that kind of play if he's going to come out on top. And already, before I can finish my sentence, all of these Adepts go down.
Oh, that is really painful indeed to lose those. He needs to take that additional base, but every unit you lose, especially when you're going mass Phoenixes, makes it harder and harder to secure the 3rd Nexus. And when Serral's doing a build like this, a strategy where he's just going to have masses of Zerglings, the Phoenixes don't fare well against that.
Yeah, it's funny, even though the Phoenixes can pick up the Zerglings and kill them, if the Zerglings are high enough in number, I mean, how many Phoenixes are you really going to need to actually take that out? And of course, if Lings are so fast as they move around the map, it's hard to keep track of them.
Well, there is an Oracle there to help, so that 3rd Nexus should be going down pretty soon here, and hopefully he can hold on. But Serral, in the meantime, he's working on his drone count, adding a bunch of Queens as well, and looking completely fine this game.
Yeah, so far so good. I'm curious to see if Serral's going to try to set up those drops again, do something like that to try to get the Protoss stuffed into the corner of the map, and all of a sudden he's having to react and defend and unable to actually ever get that push out like we saw in game 2.
Well, right now the Phoenixes are coming out. We'll see how well defended Serral's going to be against these. Quite a few of them, but look at this queen count. He's got 7 queens in his main base ready for these Phoenixes.
Okay, the queens are coming forward here, and immediately they get right underneath those Phoenixes. 2 drone kills, not bad, but certainly not enough for what he invested with these Phoenixes.
Yeah, making a beeline to that 3rd base now. There is a Spore there to help out on the defense. But overall, yeah, 2 Spores even. Serral really has read this beautifully and is defending every edge.
Now, when you invest in this many Phoenixes, you're obviously not investing in other stuff that you could have had. So you really need to make that work and make that pay for himself. By the way, this Oracle spots those Banelings. That was a good decision there by Serral to just cancel that. He'll have to come up with something else. And there's the Oracle tagging the Lings to make sure they'll see exactly where they are in case they try to run in there and kill workers later on in the game.
Yeah, very sneaky move by Serral, but Stats counters it well with his scouting. But now we're going into the next phase of the game. Immortals are being made. We have the Hydralisk Den on the way, Baneling Speed on the way. So we're going to go into a very classic battle in Protoss versus Zerg, and that is the battle of Protoss to get into his Psy Storm, his charge, his Immortals, against the deadly Hydralisk Baneling composition.
And this is kind of the age-old PvZ here in StarCraft 2. The Zerg will continue to grow on the map. The Zerg always wants to be 1 to 2 expansions ahead of the Protoss. That's just the nature of the way they operate. And the Protoss is eventually going to come out here and try to do some damage. Now, this is some great harass here. 9 drones killed, and I don't think he's done yet. These Phoenixes are going to rotate over here towards the main, and they could certainly get some more pickups if he decides to go for it.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to continue to try to harass here. He's taking a lot of damage on those Phoenixes, so they're certainly very bruised and are going to have a hard time against Hydralisk. But 12 drones isn't bad. Look at that, 21 overall. Stats is still making this work pretty well.
Yeah, Stats is playing the game he needed to bring here in Game 1 or Game 2. These Phoenixes are actually beginning to pay for themselves and a lot more. We have some more gateways coming down here with 2 Robos up. Immortals will be coming out at a pretty quick pace. And I'm actually feeling pretty optimistic for Stats in this game.
Yeah, you know, it opened up with Serral having a pretty good strategy against what Stats had decided to do, but Stats has dealt with it well. Truthfully, both players playing very nicely, but Stats is finally going to get into a game that he likes, I think.
The Lings continue to stay outside of the base here. He's just looking for any stray units he can surround, any more damage he can do. And we'll see the rocks are going to be torn down here as well. We do want to keep in mind, if we could just go big picture here, in the upper right corner of the map, we could end up seeing the gold base be taken here. So we want to watch for that. Occasionally Zergs will take that, and then if they just have that for too long, there's not a lot you can do to stop them because they just outproduce you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. But, you know, I think what we'll end up seeing this game perhaps is just a very standard game. We do have the creep spread getting all the way up, getting close to the third base of Stats, and a lot of times Swarm Host play can be nice in this type of situation. You kind of launch the Locust over the wall, but with Phoenixes and Storm ready for that, we could also see Serral just go up into his Hive tech.
You're absolutely right. We see that Psystorm, by the way, getting close to being finished. That's one of the last big things that Protoss really need in order to combat huge throngs of Zerg units, is just having all that damage come out so immediately. By the way, a Warp Prism is being made here as well, which could tell us that we're going to start seeing, at the bare minimum, a harass, at the most, a push.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Swarm Hosts are the order of the day here for Serral. He is getting ready to try to abuse the terrain on this map heavily against Stats, but Stats is good against this type of play as well. Oh, Hydralisk getting caught there in a stasis ward for a moment at least. Looks like he does want to put pressure on, but I can't see him breaking through here.
And this is pretty common for a Zerg in a fairly passive game like this, is to start to position your army. Whoa, 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 whoa. Templars now being hit by some of these Banelings. To what I was saying earlier, to get your army just on the edges of their bases, you're waiting to see them leave on one side, and then you come in on the other and try to do damage. When they come back and try to defend, you just run out.
Yeah, it's definitely a very strong tactic that both these players are familiar with. Now, the Swarm Hosts are large in number right now, but Stats is pretty ready. He has a lot of static D, he has a lot of splash damage, and he has a Prism out on the map. That Prism is going to be so important. If he can get some big warp-ins while Serral's units are on the other side, that's where some big counter damage can happen.
Okay, we see those Locusts coming up, abusing this ridge over here. He can rain those down and try to take out the Templars, and that's exactly what he does.
Wow, fantastically done, picking off all those High Templars. That means the Hydras can come in here and just rail through those Archons. The rest of Stats' army coming up. He does have Psystorm in here, so he should still be able to hold.
Beautifully done. Meanwhile, the Zealots that were intended to try to wipe out this hatchery have been cleaned up by these Zerglings.
Yeah, Stats, I mean, his defense is pretty good, but it seems like Serral is just being a bit more efficient, ready now to launch his Locusts at that fourth base when they're recharged.
And this specific technique that we're seeing with the Swarm Host is very specific to this map. He can actually launch those over that edge and then retreat to safety.
Yeah, it's a really great strat, and Serral showing us how powerful it really can be. Now, does Stats know he's down here? No, he absolutely does not. Just a group of Zealots there, which won't be that helpful. In the meantime, a lot of Banelings rolling up.
And he completely shuts that down. Meanwhile, Serral going to try to come in here again. It's so important that Stats manages to keep this expansion alive here. More Banelings spilling forward.
Some great force fields go down, some Psystorms as well, trying to help clear this up. Oh, Banelings rolling into that mineral line as well. 10 probes fall. And I got to say, Serral is being very efficient. He's not ready to kill Stats right now, but he continues to pick off high-tech units like High Templar.
The Stats has gotten his 4 bases up. He has the upgrades, but it seems like Serral really has the position. And you're totally right, Artosis. He's not actually overextending basically ever. He comes in there, he does the damage. The moment he identifies, okay, I've overstayed my welcome, he'll go back out. Meanwhile, Serral is continuing to finish up his tech tree on his side of the map.
That's right, getting ready for those important Broodlords. Look at this, another dive in here with those Locusts. He's surrounding so many Immortals. Stats having a terrible time right now. GG!